1. Groundnut. Centuries before supermarkets existed, Native Americans had already discovered the remarkable groundnut. This climbing vine thrives along rivers and in damp woodlands, twining around trees from Canada down to Florida. Above ground it looks unassuming, but underground lies its secret treasure. Chains of tuberous roots resembling strings of potatoes that can stretch several feet. One healthy plant could produce enough food to sustain a family for days, which is why groundnut became a survival food for countless generations. For thousands of years, Native Americans harvested these tubers, and they later taught early European settlers how to do the same. During their first brutal winter, when corn and wheat crops failed, the Pilgrims relied on groundnut to survive. Unlike regular potatoes, groundnut stands out for its high protein content, about 3 times as much, reaching 15 to 17%. That's a rare quality for a wild plant, making it a natural protein bank for communities that depended mainly on crops. Even more surprising, roasted groundnut doesn't taste bland at all. It has a sweet, nutty flavor similar to chestnuts. Groundnut is also a model of ecological harmony. Like beans, it fixes nitrogen from the air, enriching the soil for future harvests. Growing it is remarkably simple. Plant a few tubers in moist soil in spring, let them climb a fence, trellis, or corn stalk, and by fall you'll have an entire network of new tubers ready to dig. Because it is perennial, it keeps producing year after year once established. Yet over time, this nutritious food slipped into obscurity, overshadowed by more commercial crops. Today, groundnut still grows wild across North America, a reminder that some of the most sustainable and nourishing solutions have been right under our feet all along. 2. Jerusalem artichoke. Among forgotten root vegetables, the Jerusalem artichoke, also known as sunchoke, is one of the most misunderstood. Despite its name, it has nothing to do with Jerusalem or artichokes. It's actually a sunflower relative with knobby tubers that hold a distinct earthy sweetness. Native tribes valued sunchokes because they were easy to grow and could be stored through long winters. While fragile crops wilted in frost or drought, sunchokes stood strong, thriving in conditions that defeated most vegetables. What makes this root special is not just its resilience but also its nutrition. Jerusalem artichokes are rich in inulin, a unique soluble fiber. Instead of being digested directly, inulin feeds beneficial gut bacteria, supporting digestion and boosting immunity. In other words, eating sunchokes is like throwing a feast for your microbiome. Roasted or boiled, they deliver a flavor that balances the nuttiness of chestnuts with the mild creaminess of potatoes. Paradoxically, despite their toughness and nutritional value, sunchokes rarely appear in supermarkets. They still grow wild along roadsides and abandoned lots, and gardeners who plant them quickly learn how aggressively they spread. Some dismiss them as edible weeds. Yet their hardy nature, rich fiber content, and pleasantly sweet taste make Jerusalem artichokes worth remembering, not as a curiosity, but as a food source perfectly adapted to survive where others fail. 3. Camas. Among the traditional foods of the Pacific Northwest, blue camas stands out as both a cultural treasure and a nutritional staple. At first glance, camas seems like nothing more than a meadow of delicate purple-blue flowers swaying in the breeze. But beneath the soil lie bulbs that fed native communities for thousands of years, from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific coast. Raw camas bulbs are bitter, starchy, and inedible, sometimes even harmful. Yet indigenous people mastered a cooking technique that transformed them into a sweet, nourishing food. They dug massive earth ovens, sometimes 6 feet deep, layered them with hot stones and wet grasses, and buried the bulbs to cook slowly for 2 to 3 days. This process converted the harsh starches into sugars, producing a rich, molasses-like sweetness. Once dried, the bulbs could be stored for months, providing critical sustenance during winter. Managing camas meadows became an art form passed down through generations. Families treated these fields as carefully maintained gardens, burning away competing plants to ensure the bulbs grew larger. Harvesting required deep knowledge, since camas has a deadly twin death camas. Its white or pale yellow flowers are highly toxic, while true camas blooms deep blue-purple. The ability to distinguish the two meant the difference between life and death, a skill only learned through years of experience. Today, camas still blooms across the Pacific Northwest, providing nectar for pollinators like bees and butterflies. For modern onlookers, it may appear as just another wildflower. But for indigenous peoples, it was once a cornerstone of food security and community survival. Camas reminds us how traditional knowledge could transform a bitter root into life-sustaining sweetness, turning careful stewardship into abundance. 4. Candy roaster squash. Among the Cherokee people, the candy roaster squash was more than just food. It was a dependable safeguard against hunger. Its name perfectly captures its essence. When roasted, its bright orange flesh releases a natural sweetness that fills the air like candy. Families relied on this giant squash every autumn, not only for its taste but also for its remarkable ability to last. Thanks to its thick, armor-like skin, candy roasters could be stored for 6 to 8 months, often lasting well into spring. The Cherokee grew candy roasters in the classic Three Sisters system alongside corn and beans. Corn provided the vertical support, beans enriched the soil with nitrogen, and squash spread wide leaves to suppress weeds. This was a system of ecological farming perfected long before the term sustainable agriculture existed. Candy roaster squash was also versatile in the kitchen. Beyond roasting, Cherokee cooks used it in soups, stews, and even pies. Rich in vitamin A, it supported eye health during long, dark winters when fresh produce was scarce. Combined with its exceptional storage ability, candy roaster became a cornerstone of food security. Today, true Cherokee candy roasters are rarely found outside seed-saving networks and small gardens. Yet with their unbeatable sweetness, nutritional value, and resilience, these heirloom squashes deserve a revival, not only as a cultural legacy but as a practical food source for modern times. 5. Ramps. When spring arrives in the eastern woodlands, ramps, also known as wild leeks, push up through the forest floor like a green promise after the long winter. For native communities and early settlers, ramps were more than seasonal greens. They were a lifeline after months of dried corn, stored squash, and scarce protein. Their arrival signaled renewal, nourishment, and survival. What made ramps invaluable was their extraordinary vitamin C content, higher than many citrus fruits. In a time when scurvy could devastate entire groups, ramps were nature's antidote. But beyond nutrition, ramps offered a bold, unforgettable flavor. Broad green leaves and white bulbs with purple stems tasted like garlic and onion combined, only much stronger. The aroma lingered so intensely that teachers in Appalachian schools once sent children home during ramp season because the smell filled entire classrooms. Harvesting ramps required both skill and restraint. Native foragers understood sustainability long before the term existed. Early in the season, they picked only the leaves, leaving the bulbs to mature. Later, they dug some bulbs carefully, always leaving enough behind for regrowth. Overharvesting could wipe out entire patches, since ramps take up to 7 years to grow from seed. Today, ramps still thrive in rich hardwood forests from Canada to the Carolinas, often found beneath maples and oaks. But growing popularity has threatened wild populations, making careful harvesting more important than ever. Cultivated ramps exist, yet most still come from the wild, reminding us of the delicate balance between human appetite and ecological survival. To eat ramps today is to savor not only their pungent flavor, but also a connection to the careful, seasonal rhythms practiced by generations before us. 6. Amaranth. Before amaranth was rediscovered as a trendy superfood, it had already been cultivated by Native Americans for over 8,000 years. Every part of this plant was used. Tender leaves were cooked like spinach, rich in iron and vitamins, while its tiny seeds were ground into flour, boiled into porridge, or popped like miniature popcorn. Amaranth wasn't just food, it was a cornerstone of life. What sets amaranth apart is its complete protein content. Unlike most plants, its seeds naturally contain all 9 essential amino acids, usually found only in animal products. This made it invaluable to the Aztecs, who not only relied on it for sustenance but also incorporated it into religious rituals. They crafted statues from amaranth dough mixed with honey, symbols of vitality and strength. Alarmed by its cultural power, Spanish colonizers banned amaranth, attempting to erase its place in indigenous life. Amaranth is also remarkably hardy. It thrives in poor soil, resists drought, and produces thousands of seeds per plant, sometimes a full pound of grain from a single bush. The seeds have a nutty, slightly peppery flavor, while young leaves taste mild and earthy, suitable for salads or stir-fries. Today, amaranth is making a comeback in gardens and health food stores, celebrated for the very qualities that sustained civilizations long ago. Its resilience, nutritional density, and cultural history remind us that indigenous knowledge often anticipated modern science by centuries. Amaranth is more than an ancient grain. It is proof that humanity's oldest foods may still hold the keys to a more sustainable future. 7. Pole beans. In Native American agriculture, pole beans were more than crops, they were partners in innovation. Unlike bush beans that sprawled across the soil, pole beans climbed vertically, often using corn stalks as their ladders. This partnership turned cornfields into three-dimensional gardens, where every inch of space produced food. While the beans climbed high, their roots worked underground, fixing nitrogen from the air and enriching the soil naturally. The Cherokee and other tribes grew pole beans alongside corn and squash in the Three Sisters system. Together, the plants supported and protected one another, creating fields that were both productive and ecologically balanced. The beans themselves were stunningly diverse. Deep purples, mottled reds, creamy whites, and speckled browns. Each variety carried unique flavors and textures, some soft and mild, others firm and earthy, perfect for hearty winter stews. Seed saving ensured this diversity endured. Families carefully selected the strongest, most colorful beans each harvest, preserving varieties that adapted perfectly to local conditions. Over generations, this practice produced hundreds of unique strains, each telling a story of climate, soil, and culture. Today, as industrial agriculture pushes uniformity, pole beans remind us of the value of biodiversity. They are not only nutritious and sustainable but also living testaments to human ingenuity. Proof that careful observation of nature can yield farming systems both abundant and resilient. 8. Skirret. Once common in colonial gardens, skirret has nearly disappeared from memory. This perennial root crop produces clusters of slender white tubers, resembling skinny parsnips, all sprouting from a single crown. Its flavor is described as a blend of carrot and sweet potato, mild yet satisfying enough to serve as a staple food during long winters. Skirret's nutritional strength lies in its very high fiber content, surpassing that of potatoes or parsnips. This made it not only filling but also beneficial for digestion, an invaluable trait in times when balanced diets were rare. Another advantage was its perennial nature. Once planted, skirret continued producing year after year without needing replanting, offering families a reliable source of food with minimal labor. Despite these strengths, skirret gradually vanished from American gardens in the 19th century. Perhaps it was overshadowed by the rise of potatoes and carrots, or maybe it was simply considered too ordinary. Yet earlier generations valued it deeply, boiling, roasting, or mashing the roots into hearty meals that carried them through cold seasons. Today, skirret survives mostly in specialty seed catalogs, waiting for gardeners curious enough to rediscover it. Thriving in cool, moist soils with little care required, it has the potential to return as a sustainable crop for modern times. Its story is a reminder that sometimes the most enduring foods are the simplest ones, quiet, reliable, and easily overlooked. 9. Tomatillo. Long before tomatoes rose to global fame, the tomatillo, or husk tomato, was a staple of Native American diets. The Aztecs called it tomatal, a word that later gave us tomato. Each small, green fruit grows wrapped in a papery husk, which not only protects it from pests but also signals ripeness when it splits open. Tomatillos are prized for their tart, citrus-like flavor, often compared to a blend of apple and lime. When cooked, their sharpness mellows into a subtle sweetness, forming the base of countless sauces, stews, and especially salsa verde in traditional Mexican cuisine. Beyond flavor, tomatillos are nutritional powerhouses, packed with vitamin C and antioxidants that strengthen immunity. Traditionally, tomatillos were grown alongside corn and beans in the Three Sisters gardens. They are hardy plants, requiring little maintenance, resisting most pests, and enduring drought better than tomatoes. Each bushy plant can yield dozens of fruits, making them a reliable food source. Despite this, tomatillos remain rare in mainstream supermarkets, largely because they never became part of the global tomato craze. Instead, they continue to thrive in community gardens and among Latin American households, quietly carrying on their legacy. To grow or cook with tomatillos today is to participate in a tradition that spans centuries, one that proves some of the best foods are still hidden in plain sight. 10. Wild rice. Among North America's most sacred native foods, wild rice stands apart as both nourishment and ecological cornerstone. Contrary to its name, wild rice is not rice at all, but the seed of an aquatic grass that grows in shallow lakes and slow-moving rivers of the upper Midwest and Canada. To the Ojibwe people, it was known as manumin, or the good berry, and central to prophecies that guided their ancestors to lands where food grows on water. Harvesting wild rice has long been a deeply cultural and sustainable practice. Each late summer, two people set out in a canoe. One pulls gently through the tall grasses while the other uses wooden sticks called knockers to bend the stalks and tap ripe seeds into the canoe. Unripe seeds fall back into the water, ensuring next year's crop. This method reflects a profound respect for balance, feeding people without exhausting the land. Nutritionally, wild rice is exceptional. It contains twice the protein of brown rice, is high in B vitamins like folate and niacin, and delivers significant fiber, magnesium, and antioxidants. Its taste is equally distinct: nutty, earthy, and slightly chewy, perfect in soups, salads, or stuffings. Though it takes longer to cook than white rice, the result is a food rich in both flavor and heritage. Beyond the table, wild rice beds function as ecosystems in themselves. They naturally filter water, prevent erosion, and provide habitats for waterfowl, fish, muskrats, and countless other species. Protecting wild rice means preserving wetlands that support entire communities of life. Yet most wild rice found in supermarkets today is commercially cultivated in flooded fields, not hand-harvested from natural lakes. Authentic wild rice is rarer and more expensive, reflecting the labor-intensive, weather-dependent harvest carried out by native cooperatives. Buying the real thing supports cultural traditions and environmental stewardship simultaneously. For native peoples, harvesting wild rice remains a source of identity and pride, a practice linking present generations with their ancestors. To share a bowl of true wild rice is to partake not only in superior nutrition but also in a living tradition, one that shows how food, culture, and ecology are inseparable.